4. Plenty of time for John. Now squeezes, steps up in the pocket. LA can run. Inside the 10. Head first. He flies off the 5-yard line.
Manning out of the gun. Manning lets it fly. It's caught by Thomas. There's the record for Peyton Manning.
Rushing forward, ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground and still on the ground. Picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line.
Here we go. First snap of the overtime. The Broncos have been in 3 overtime games this year. They won them all. Got him at the 40. It's Thomas at the 50. Stiff arm got him. Bree to the 30. To the 20. Thomas to the 10. Denver's going on to New England. They win it on the first.
And welcome to the 5280 podcast on the MHRT Network. My name is Mundungus Creevy, as always, alongside my co-hosts Glenn, Cam, and Mr. Boggins. We are a fan-led Broncos-based podcast, bringing you all of our insight and opinions, whether you want them or not, on our favorite team, the Denver Broncos. Now, we are very excited to once again welcome a member of Mile High Sports and a host of the Let's Talk Broncos podcast, alongside Bree and Zach Seegers, and he is, in fact, a draft genius. Ladies and gentlemen, Joey Richards back on the show today. Hey, Joey.
Woo!
Draft genius.
I appreciate you guys having me on. I always love watching you guys' intro right there. I think it's me pumped up. That's definitely the best intro in the Broncos game for sure.
Which part was it, Joey? Was it the part that he called you a genius, or was it the part that he called you a draft genius?
I'll take either or, Cam. I'll take either or.
Now, obviously, we just had the NFL draft. I wanted to get your thoughts on overall what you thought of the Broncos draft picks.
Yeah, I think there's obviously going to be a little bit of hesitance, I think, from fans. Just because the Broncos traded for Russell Wilson and you lose a lot of draft picks in that trade. So you're not going to get the massive names that we've been hearing about this entire process, right? Like, we've had this massive break of no football, and all we've been hearing about is prospects that the Broncos can't draft. So when at the end and you're just looking at that board, you're like, dang, I don't know. Did they really have the best draft? But overall, I think that they did an okay job based off my board. I think they did a pretty good job. Now, I have some guys that I personally love that the Broncos passed up on, but I can't blame the Broncos for having a different opinion than me. So I think overall they did an okay job.
So, Joey, you were in Vegas for the draft with Zach and Bree. What was that experience like?
It was a lot of fun. I mean, it was cool. I was supposed to go to the draft last year. Obviously, it got canceled. So we rescheduled, and I was able to bring some of my friends along, some of my co-hosts along with us. And I mean, absolute blast. It was cool being able to just be in the whole draft experience, right? Like different, I don't know. The draft has been something I've loved forever. So just being able to be immersed in it is such a cool thing. And then I was able to record live with Bree and Zach. We met up with some people at a bar down there, some other Broncos fans. It was a good experience all around.
I have to ask, there was the everything that, certainly unfolded. It had to still make the whole draft sweeter, knowing the fact that, Russell Wilson was, the starting quarterback going down there. But I got to ask the very obvious question. We talked about it pre-pod, but we all know Bree was rocking that Drew Lock jersey of the Seattle Seahawks jersey. Please enlighten us how this whole story came about with Bree and the Seattle Seahawks Drew Lock jersey.
Yeah, it was Bree's birthday. She's a huge Drew Lock fan, and I wanted to get her something, but kind of, I don't know. I'm just not in like the nicest way, so I guess I gave her the Seahawks. And the Seahawks, just so everyone knows, the Seahawks Drew Lock jersey isn't like available online, so you have to custom order that one. You have to get that one shipped in. And funny enough, it came in like 3 days. I don't know. They were just They were taking it out of there. They wanted nothing to do with that jersey. At the
How ironic.
They're like, thank God we can get rid of this.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy, but yeah. So she wore that a big portion down there. That was funny too, because I was wearing the John Elway white throwback jersey, and then walking around with the Seahawks lock jersey. It got a lot of fun.
How did you like Las Vegas? Any cool stories?
I mean, I guess the funniest story was just that was the first time we've ever recorded a podcast all together, like in one area. It's usually through online or through the computer. So we set up a little studio in Zach's hotel room in the MGM, and it was we had the mic placed on the suitcase, and we were all kind of sitting on the floor around it recording. We got a good picture of that on the LTB podcast Twitter. So if you guys want to go check that out, go check out our custom studio. You could go do that. But that was a funny thing for us.
Seegers went so cheap that he didn't get a room that even had a table in it. I mean,
there's a lot of options at the MGM.
Yeah, like one of the chairs, tables. It was interesting.
One of the funny things I like during the whole draft was I kept tweeting and texting the entire time, like, the Seahawks are going to take a quarterback. It's going to happen.
Yeah,
and they didn't. So
they picked up who we thought we were going to pick up later.
What was that?
What?
Are they legit good, like riding with Drew Lock?
I mean, it sounds like it, right? All indications point that it's him and Geno Smith in that quarterback room. And it's not just like they passed up on quarterback at 9. The quarterbacks didn't go until like the 3rd round. That's when they started going. They passed up on these quarterbacks multiple times.
Yeah.
They really didn't want to take any of these guys.
So I actually kind of liked what the Seahawks did, though. They it seemed like even though it is kind of ironic that they got both bookends after Russell Wilson left. That was pretty hilarious.
Ironic.
But I think they're essentially prepping for 2023, which Joey knows how way much better that draft is going to be for QB than this one. So everyone's just like piling up, getting ready to protect their new franchise QB probably next year.
I mean, yeah, if the Broncos stayed at 9, I was before we made that Russell Wilson trade, I was advocating for the Broncos not to take a quarterback there as well. That's just what I think about the quarterback class. Not very good, and it looked like the NFL agreed. I was shocked that you didn't see many reaches there. Usually, I thought that I was going to 100% put a shot on that take that the NFL reaches on quarterbacks, but changed a little.
Do you think the Steelers missed the memo? They were like, I wonder when they actually could have got Kenny Pickett.
That's a great question. Where would a Kenny Pickett gone if the Steelers didn't take him? I mean, man, they definitely missed the memo for sure.
I'm waiting for Geno to say that he's not going to mentor Drew Lock.
So there was, kind of going with this overall draft theme. Was there any pick that was a complete surprise?
For the Broncos or just overall?
Just overall, like anybody in the first or like any like massively reached pick.
I thought that Tyler Smith pick for the Cowboys was a little bit of a reach. I did a lot of O-line work this year, and man, he has a lot of tools and he's heavy hands and athletic and all of that, but usually you don't see that type of projects go until later. And the Cowboys taking him in the first was a massive shock to me. There was rumors going around before the draft started, but it just didn't seem possible until it actually happened.
Did you see the video of Jerry Jones showing their big board, the paper, in the press conference, trying to prove that they had him, they ranked that high on his big board? He's like, yeah, we already had seed. Look.
Yeah, exactly.
And then his son was like, put that down.
Yeah. That was great. That was great. I love it. The draft has so much content involved with it. All these characters. It's crazy. Jerry Jones is always good for a nice draft day video of some sort.
So how spread out was everything there? Where we saw, the Rich Eisen and the gang, to where the picks were actually being made. How did the lay of the land work?
It's interesting. That day one is the day I I mean, it was on accident. I was supposed to meet up with Reed and Zach somewhere, and I thought they were going to the main stage, and they weren't. So I took a taxi down there. So I took a look. It was packed. It was flooded. I mean, by the time I was there, I was at least 600 yards away from the stage, and it was really, really hard to see what was going on. So I think, it was. I thought they could have done a better job of just looking for, I guess, the fans' perspective, everyone wanting to be so immersed in the actual draft picking of it. But yeah, I mean, I had fun either way.
I wonder if that's kind of a thing that they try to do where they just like it on like the street level instead of putting it in the stadium, even though I feel like a stadium would be way more practical for being able to watch something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
They try to make it feel more like a block party or something.
For sure. I mean, there's like, if you're a big draft nerd, there's so much going on through the television. Like, you get the analysts' takes, right? The best player available board over there. You get that little ticker on the bottom. There's a lot of that type of stuff that you miss if you can't see this stage at the draft.
Yeah.
One of the things I was going to say, one of the things that I thought was at least great about the fact that it was in Vegas was like, or on the outskirts of Vegas, or like in the middle of Vegas, and not like in a stadium, was like you were immersed literally in the culture of Vegas.
Yeah.
Like, you were literally having like mini concerts, like before the pick, or like, or you had, people beforehand, like, taking 20 hours to, before they like said what the pick was. But, what was the overall experience of like something like that? Because obviously Vegas seemed like they handled it way different than obviously any other draft. But what was that experience like, seeing just the complete, I guess, difference of announcing draft picks?
Yeah, no, it was cool. I mean, it was definitely hard to focus. Like, I remember during like the 10th pick, I'm sitting there trying to focus on the draft, and the Jabberwockies are
the Jabberwockies.
It was like I didn't know what was going on half the time. Wow. I was sitting there looking at that ticker, but yeah, it was cool. You definitely got the Vegas experience. They definitely tied that into the draft. It was really cool walking down the street and just seeing everybody in their favorite football team's jersey and stuff like that. So many people representing their team, so many fans. It was a cool experience.
You said a lot of Bronco fans too.
Definitely a lot of Broncos fans. A lot of Broncos fans. I would say that was probably in the top 3 teams I saw represented there.
What were they wearing? What were the
Broncos jerseys?
I would say the most common jersey I saw was that number 2 Patrick Surtain jersey. That's a
wow, nice. That's cool.
All right, so sticking with the Broncos, let's go ahead and break down their picks. Now I'm going to try to get their names right. I'm going to attempt. There's only like 3 where it's like. All right, so pick 64, edge out of Oklahoma, Nick Benito. He was our first pick in the second round. And then at pick 80, tight end from UCLA is Greg Dulcich.
Dulcich.
I was close. Yep. 115, cornerback out of Pittsburgh, Damari Mathis. Here's the one.
Here we go.
116, interior defensive lineman out of Iowa State, Ayoma Uwazuriki.
Yeah, close.
Okay, I tried.
No, you did good.
152, safety out of Oklahoma is Delarin Turner Yell. Delarin.
Yeah.
162, wide receiver out of Samford, Montreal, Washington. Pick 171, a center or guard out of Washington, Luke Wattenberg. Pick 206, interior defensive lineman out of Wisconsin is Matt Henningsen. And pick 232, cornerback from Wisconsin, Faion Hicks.
Yeah, we did it.
Was there any favorites out of those? That was your favorite pick?
I think my favorite pick was the Broncos' first pick and Nick Benito, just because, I mean, I've been doing a lot in how Mile High Sports kind of assigned us was different position groups. Zach Seegers and I kind of took lead of that for this draft. And I did a lot of edge work. And I think Nick Benito, I mean, just looking at the edge position for the Broncos, let's start there, right? They definitely needed edge help. Not just because Randy Gregory, we all know Randy Gregory and Bradley Chubb have had a tough time staying on the field. But because our depth behind them isn't very great, I think Malik Reed isn't I think he's a little overhyped by fans sometimes. And Jonathan Cooper, I would like more as your edge 4 in a perfect world. So drafting a Nick Benito gives you insurance on Bradley Chubb, who has a contract coming up, and it gives you edge depth because if you can get to the quarterback only bringing 4, and how you do that is having a rotation, it means massive things for your defense. You don't have to bring extra guys, just a lot of help there. So Nick Benito, I thought was a really good pick.
Well, that was one of my big questions about Nick Benito, because we got the word that Baron Browning might be switching to the outside. Is where does he fit with Baron Browning moving out? Is he more of a replacing Reed? Is he more of a replacing Chubb if he gets hurt, or Gregory if he gets hurt, or where does he fall in as far as the edge rushers go?
You know, it's interesting because it's hard for me to imagine Baron Browning, them actually moving him full-time edge. Like, that's just a hard thing for me to imagine. I think that he's still going to be an inside linebacker majorly, and maybe he gets edge reps, right? It's just, it's tough to think that you just had this guy who in his rookie year, after missing a big portion of training camp due to injury, thrown in the middle of the fire halfway through the season and ended up playing well his rookie year, and then you switching his position 100% completely. That's just a hard thing for me to imagine. It's definitely been reported. I've heard it from multiple different people too, just talking around. But until I actually see it happen, it's hard for me to believe.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think he's going to be used more as, it is kind of confusing because you would want him to stick at, especially being so young, you'd want him to stick at one thing and then really get better and better at it. But they're kind of doing it what he did at OSU, which is just kind of be everywhere, or at least be edge and inside as well. It's just kind of like it almost validates the hybrid to me that they use their first overall pick, or their first pick on Nick Benito. It's just like, because they're adding more depth to the edge, and why would they add that with their very first pick if they were confirming Baron Browning at that position? I think that just means that he's going to be more versatile on that defense.
Yeah, and I was going to say one of the things that I really liked about Nick Benito, and it's one of the reasons why I kind of saw, funny enough, Hassan Reddick in him. Just because, and why I say it's funny is because, Hassan Reddick was a free agent in this offseason, and one that probably the Broncos could have, paid, good money for to bring in. But like, he has that versatility. Like, Benito has that versatility that you could possibly move him inside kind of the ways like a Baron Browning. And so I think that getting him in and then putting him solely at edge, or, now you have the opportunity of Baron Browning and Benito as like your two versatile weapons that you can use interchangeably. I think gives you that flexibility and versatility, as far as with what they want to do. So that was really one of the main reasons why I liked Nick Benito. But I mean, obviously too, like, he's just a pure pass rusher at the point, or a pure speed rusher, I should say, that he's just so good when he can win, he can win.
Yeah.
I think it will be very interesting to watch how he pops, like if he does pop, because I think going in, he was just essentially a specialist, a speed rush specialist. And I don't think he currently has the strength to match up with NFL sized tackles right now, but shoot, man, it will be interesting to see. That's the type of guy that could all of a sudden pop off the screen and you're just not sure how he's just getting around the tackles. But I mean, I think he's it'll be a little bit. So I wouldn't, fans out there, I wouldn't hold him too high of standard right off the bat. I think he's going to be definitely more rotational and blitz packages, but I am excited to see the possibility. There will be moments where you're like, is that Von Miller out there? but it's going to come once every what a while, but it's going to hold the fans tight for a while, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think a lot of his he obviously wins off of his traits, his speed rush, like you were mentioning. And the one thing you do worry about, if you were to say Benito is a pass rush specialist, that's where I envision him being. It's like, oh, then you drafted the right player 100%. That's one thing he can do is get after the quarterback. Mm-hmm. Now, on an every down basis, that's where the issues come in, as you mentioned, because of weight concerns, and he just needs to get stronger to be able to set an edge at an NFL level. I also think the lack of length is a little bit of an issue, and that's something you really can't coach up or teach. That's just something he has, and he's going to have to become savvy enough to work around.
So, Joey, when Elvis Dumerville was walking up with the draft card, what name were you hoping was called?
I was thinking edge for sure, and there was a huge run on edge right before, so I wasn't going to be mad. Nick Benito was high up on my board right there. Just, kind of because what I said, in a perfect world, if I'm saying Bradley Chubb and Randy Gregory will be healthy this year, I think Nick Benito was a home run, just as a rotation guy right there.
Hey, we were talking about length. I don't know if you guys will get the reference, but we were talking about his length being a problem. His arm length is less than George Karlaftis, who was going into it. People were talking about him being not. Yeah. People mentioned T-Rex arms. Yeah. With George Karlaftis at first, and Nick Benito's are even shorter.
Yeah. And he calls Wilt Russell the little guy, right?
Yeah, and you see it come up on film too. He doesn't use a lot of. He's good at avoiding contact from the tackles. He's not very great at playing through the contact. Yeah. So that's something. That's the biggest area he's gonna have to work on.
So EJ wants to know if we think the Broncos should have drafted Nakobe Dean or Leo. Was that Chanel?
Yeah.
Chanel in the third round instead of Dulcich.
It's a hard one to answer because it's at that point I feel like that's about your projection, and there's no right or wrong answer because it's the simple point of projection. I loved Leo Chanel, and so it was one that if they drafted him within that third round, I wouldn't have been upset. And so, but even Dulcich, some people even had him as tight end 1, and so I think that for the Broncos to be able to get something like that, and for us to truly have that answer would be a few years down the road. And so I think that the Broncos clearly felt like, with everything that the way that it unfolded, that they might have valued Dulcich just a little bit more in the way that he, offers with their pass offense. But I think truly to answer that question, and the others can answer that too, but it's just I feel like it's just simply through projection of the next few years.
Yeah. If Dean, Dean, great player. I think, I have my concerns with him as everybody, but when those injuries started coming out and you started reading about that as the draft was going on, I wouldn't have touched him either. Those are two injuries they were talking about that he may have to redshirt this year because of them. So that's a massive deal for a guy that already has had an extensive injury history. Now, as far as the linebacker position in general, I never really saw the linebacker position as being a big need, if I'm being honest. I think that Baron Browning, Josie Jewell, Alex Singleton, Jonas Griffith, those are 4 names that could play. We've seen them play. And I guess taking a guy early, you would have to feel comfortable saying, okay, he's probably not going to see the field at all this first year, right? He's going to get that redshirt year regardless. So I was fine with them not taking linebacker there.
So one of the things that I wanted to get into, and it's going to cover all the players. Boggins actually put it out on Twitter. It's got all the draft picks and the undrafted free agents, their height, weight, and then their RAS, which is their raw athletic score, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got that right. So I'm going to pull that up, and then we'll kind of go over it, kind of see where there's some players that might fit, what they might do, and we'll go from there. So we have Boggins, if you want to kind of break it down a little bit.
Yeah, you got just the round and the pick on the side there, second round, 64 overall, and then the height, weight. So these are based off of position, based off of average of each position, and red is in the lower percentile. Then you got the yellow, which is in mid range, and then green is outstanding as far as height, that'd be size, weight, size, and then Ross is overall, which is a compilation of everything necessarily, not just combine, but and some is from pro days and stuff, unofficials. You got the vertical, the broad, the all the all the speed drills, the cones, the 40s, the splits and whatnot. So that's overall. I just didn't put it all in one spreadsheet. That's just kind of giving you an idea of their overall athleticism, and then just like their size comparison to their position.
So if we are taking a look at this, so we talked about Nick Benito, right? So Greg Dulcich, are we seeing him as like tight end 2? Is he going to be? What are we looking at?
In all honesty, like he is lower than Albert O in like almost every category on the roster. So I mean, I don't know if I don't think necessarily Greg or Georgia Payton looks at the roster and is like, this one is better. But I do think that they already have like chemistry he has some sort of chemistry with Russ, and definitely I think he was like Joey, correct me if I'm wrong, was probably one of the fastest tight end times, 40 times of all time. His combine was like, it was like a 4.5 flat or something, or 4.49.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a really fast 40. I can confirm that.
Yeah, I believe Alberto, what was it, like a 4.49?
Yeah, it was. I think it was a 4.49.
Yeah.
Which shocked a lot of people. A lot of people didn't think you would run that fast.
Yeah.
So Joey, moving down into the third pick, we had Damari Mathis, the corner. Where are we seeing him fitting in as far as corners go?
Yeah, this is one of the guys that I'm still want to go more in depth on film wise, but I have seen like one game so far of him. I've studied one game in depth, and he's a guy that I think can play. He's more of an inside guy that can play outside, so that versatility is a big piece with him. And I mean, obviously he scored really well, right? He's a really good athlete. He's scoring in the above 90th percentile. He's really, really athletic. But I don't, I want to go more in depth there, I think, before I give a take on where I see him standing on the Broncos cornerback room. What I will say is that the Broncos did need a cornerback, and specifically a nickel cornerback. So the need for a 4th round pick makes perfect sense.
I think it gives you a lot of depth and a lot of because you didn't really have anything besides Williams, unless you wanted to go into like a Sengbasi, and you still don't know. Like he was starting to look decent and then got injured. So you don't really know what he's going to be able to contribute. So I think this kind of gives more versatility for that defense, especially if we're going to be running 6 DBs. You're seeing the Broncos load up with Damari Mathis and Turner Yell, and then you already have like a loaded safety room now. So you're just seeing as many DBs as possible, which I mean, honestly, you love to see. Like you want as many bodies there, or as many athletic bodies there as you can get, as long as they can sink in the scheme well.
Hey, Joey, I got to ask you the question with Montreal, Washington. Obviously, as we can all tell, the RAS score was the lowest of the entire group. But not only that, like for myself, I kind of go, back and forth, obviously, with the pick, because one, they already had KJ Hamler on the roster, right? And so the question is just going to end up becoming, what do they do with him? Do they use both Montreal, Washington and KJ Hamler on offense and as well as special teams? But, certainly it speaks for itself that maybe the game that got him drafted was that Florida game where he went just ridiculous on Florida with the amount of all-purpose yards, and I think he even led all FCS this last year in all-purpose yards. But where are you with a guy like a Montreal Washington who seems to play a little bit bigger than his size?
Yeah, it's one of those. So if you look at the relative athletic score of a 4.33, he actually tested pretty well. The height and weight are really lowering that score for him because he is 5'9", 187. I think he's a better athlete than that would indicate for sure. The Broncos definitely, I don't think KJ Hamler was stopping me from getting a receiver at this point, just because you can't bank on the guy right now. At least you can't.
Right.
He's had too many injuries. I don't think I would want to put KJ Hamler, if you want the guy to play at all for your football team, at punt returner or kick returner at this point, right? So that means that you had to go and get a punt and kick returner. Montreal Washington kind of serves as a guy that you can develop and can need a deep speed guy that the Broncos desperately need if a KJ Hamler went down, while also being, I think, you're probably day one punt and kick returner.
Cam referenced the Florida game, and those highlights I've seen those are unbelievable. I don't think I've ever seen a returner but separate themselves from the opponent like he did on that return from the house. That was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And he's excited. He didn't think he was going to get drafted, and to be a part of this. And I agree with you, Joey. As much as KJ is his potential, he's had some injury concerns, and so you can't just bank on a guy like that staying healthy.
And one thing you got to really take into consider with these raw scores is like you have to take them with a grain of salt, because they're like certain players are not going to bode well for this kind of stuff. Like Montreal's not a big dude, and also bench is included on this, which every player benches the same amount of weight. So you have a 5'9", 187 pound player benching 225, and he benched it 6 times. So it's like certain scores are going to be lower, and it's going to impact his overall score. So just because you see a red there doesn't mean he's a bad player. It's just like specific things that downgraded him. If you want, by the way, if anybody wants to go and look at these over the whole charts of each of these players, you just go to ras.football.
I was gonna say it's funny. Alex chimed in with Trendon and McKenzie. The Florida game almost was like reminiscent of Trendon Holiday's game of that Ravens game, right? So it's just like the Broncos have been dying for like that type of return, specialist. But fun fact that I noticed about Montreal, Washington is Samford has had players drafted before, but Washington is the first offensive player drafted in Samford history.
Yeah. Kind of a boss.
Johnny's saying that we may even see Washington split return reps with new UDFA Jalen Virgil from Appalachian State. Dude has 2 100-yard returns in his college career, one against Miami. And that was one of the other things I was going to get to as you scroll down a little bit. And there's all our undrafted free agents that we signed. I personally know absolutely nothing about any of them, so I will let you guys take that one.
Yeah, the top 3 are pretty interesting looks. I like Chris Allen out of Alabama. He'll be interesting to watch there. You, like I said, with cornerbacks, you can never have enough edges. Like whoever hits, like when it comes to edge, it's like whoever gets to the quarterback, man, you're putting him in. And then the other 2 are good too. Kadolfi right out of Buffalo, big dude. Jalen Virgil. I don't necessarily know if he'll start or I don't know if he'll be like that big of competition for punt return, kick return. I think that they're gonna try and do not what they did with Deontay Spencer to have a just straight up kick return, just straight returner. Essentially, I think they're going to try to make it more versatile and have them as a receiver as well. So I think Montreal definitely has the leg up in that competition.
Now, Dylan Parham is the name I recognize.
Probably not the one you're thinking of.
Yeah, there's 2 Dylan Parham.
There's 2? That's not fair.
So, guys, with the undrafted free agents, what is the sweet spot for money that the teams throw at them that essentially guarantees them a spot on the roster?
I'm not big contract guy, but I know Chris Allen, looking at his compared to everybody else's, it's pretty like they definitely wanted Chris Allen on the team, and they definitely want to at least give him a shot, right? Like that's a big deal. Hope maybe you can sneak him on the practice squad type of guy. I mean, Alabama, right? Like, it's rare you would see an Alabama edge that has a 9.5 relative athletic score go to the undrafted free agents. Like that's a pretty crazy thing. Guy that had a lot of injuries through his career, was a really highly touted high school player, and I'm also excited to see what he can bring in the NFL. Maybe the guy gets a shot.
I mean,
what were his injuries?
What were the injuries? I'd have to dig in a little bit.
Yeah, I don't
got him.
I don't even remember what they were either.
But yeah, he's definitely the prize. And I think that, what was it, in the 2021 season, his season was cut short, but I believe he had like a few sacks and a forced fumble or something like that. Like he was on the truck for the early on in the season, but then he just got, it got derailed for the injury that he had. But he was the guy opposite of Anderson in Alabama. I mean, like, and so I think that, it's one of those things that just like you have to be kind of curious of, like, I know Rich posted in the comments as far as, Andre Mintz or, Chris Allen, but it's a fair question to ask, because obviously Mintz made the roster last year. And I think that this is what makes it so fascinating with the undrafted free agent pool with the Denver Broncos, is because, over the years, they've made hay over like all these undrafted free agents. And so you almost have to wonder, who's going to be that darling, that undrafted free agent darling that's going to make the roster.
Chris Allen was a fractured foot. Was it?
Yeah.
Alex said he got hurt in 2018, 2021, had a great 2020, but was never able to grasp his position. And his first game got hurt, but was dominating in that game.
Alex is an Alabama fan, for what it's worth.
So looking at all of our draft picks and our undrafted free agent picks, what holes do we still have, if any, on the roster? Or what is our biggest need after the draft?
I think that center is still probably your biggest need there.
Yeah.
Lloyd Cushenberry, for I think the fit into this new scheme, or what they describe this new scheme as being, the outside zone blocking scheme, is a little odd. And honestly, even before this, he was probably a replaceable player, someone that if the Broncos felt they could grab a better player at the position, I wouldn't have been mad if they did. So him still being what looks like it's slated as your starting center. Now they can move some things around. They could move Glasgow to center. Now there's some weird stuff there with how tall he is and Russell Wilson's height, but I think that it has to be center at this point.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that, and I think that is the right pick. It's center, and it's certainly gonna be interesting to see, what, or should I say, how this team truly, values Luke Wattenberg down the line, because they took him in the 5th round, which is, that's your developmental center, but they also traded up for him, so they clearly valued him enough to take him, and then obviously with his athleticism, with his size, you certainly wonder, where he's going to fit down the line. And he offers that versatility a lot of the ways too that Dalton Reisner came into the league with his versatility. He played a few snaps at I believe it was left tackle. You can chime in on that, Boggins, but I was just but I think he played like left tackle, but the majority of his snaps were, left guard and center. Yeah. And so, it's one of those cases where it's going to be really interesting. And it's funny enough that the Broncos, maybe their biggest needs is on that offensive line at like that left guard and center spot. So it's going to be really curious to see, where they value Wattenberg down the line.
Mm-hmm. Alex says right tackle. Hold on. I'm sure there's a plan, but man, I still don't see the long-term plan. Running back depth. And then he says, and are we even sold on Russell Wilson? Is he even good
Okay, so what? You had a thought on the center position and possible second wave of free agency. You share that?
Right. Well, and I was a little surprised that Cam Jurgens went so early. I figured he'd be there at 64 or later. So I was hoping they were going to take Cam Jurgens. But if not, you still have J.C. Tretter and Matt Paradis out there as free agents, centers. And we haven't really seen that second wave of free agency yet. So I'm wondering if, they got Wattenberg as kind of a developmental, and then they're going to go out and get Tretter or Paradis in free agency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you have, they both aren't they both coming from, let's see, Stefanski and LaFleur. So technically,
yeah.
So technically Stefanski.
Well, and Paradis was in Carolina, so.
Oh, is he? Oh, that's right. He's Carolina. For some reason, I was thinking he was Jets. Oh, it was McGovern. Sorry.
Yeah, and then Tretter was Cleveland.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see it. I think they're both getting a little older.
Tretter's 31, Paradis is 32.
Man, I thought they were older than that. Wow.
So if you had to pick one, which one would you take?
Tretter.
Yeah.
Over Paradis?
I agree.
Yeah. The injuries, unfortunately, the injury history with Paradis is just enough for me to hit the pause button. And as much as I love reunions, I'm gonna click the pause button on Matt Paradis and go with JC Tretter.
And we'll have a former NFLPA rapper on our team, so he'll be a leader in the locker room.
And also speaking of free agents, Bryce Callahan. I probably should have done this before. Bryce Callahan got signed to Chargers, right?
Man,
which really sucks.
That's even worse because I was like fearing Trent McDuffie going to stop coughing in the microphone.
I'm sorry, I thought I muted it.
My goodness. I was fearing Trent McDuffie going to the Chargers, and then I thought we got past that. And then today they decided to make it almost even worse. That's fine. It's fine. And with the Chiefs draft, the Chiefs had such a good draft. It was so frustrating to watch. It's always tough in these circumstances though, because you think what player, like based on your own scouting and what your own opinion of each of these players, you think you are high on certain players, but that's not necessarily who the Broncos are high on. And it's just like, oh God, you think in your heart, you're like, oh man, they had a bad draft, but maybe they actually know a lot more than I do because that's what they work for the Broncos. So
yeah, I mean Bryce Callahan, obviously that connection with Staley down there. With going back to the Vic Fangio type scheme, it made a lot of sense for them to pick him up. We all know, Broncos fans all know, obviously the major concern there is the guy's injury history. He has never stayed healthy for all 16 games ever in his entire career. So that's the main concern. But when he's on the field, guy's a baller. So it sucks seeing him have to go to a division rival.
Yeah, and it's funny, Boggins was talking about Kansas City. It's all about projection, but also it's about the situation you're going to. And and so with Kansas City, they could not have scripted a better start with their first two picks, and with Trent McDuffie and Sky Moore. And McDuffie's probably going to get a lot of love, but Sky Moore is the one that's, people are probably going to be hyping up like crazy, even with fantasy football. But he's going into like a really, really good situation with Patrick Mahomes there, and the way that he is as a player. It's just a great for a team that was sort of searching for that new wide receiver one or developmental wide receiver one down the line. Yeah,
I don't think people are talking enough about the Justin Ross signing. Like that one hurt. I feel I don't know. I wish the Broncos would have pulled the trigger. Like we got so many. Like we two receivers in as UDFAs. Like Justin Ross was sitting right there. Like I understand he has the spine issues, but like, what are you gonna lose? like just like the ceiling for Justin Ross. You got to pull the trigger on that. If he ends up becoming plenty healthy, he's going to be a problem.
Right.
Yeah. Well, there were so many teams that had good drafts. And obviously being a Broncos fan, I want them to have the best draft. But then you look at like the Lions, you look at the Jets, you look at the Giants. Like they had so many first round picks. Ravens. Well, people kept jumping in front of the Ravens, which was really funny.
Dude, the Ravens was my favorite pick or favorite draft. That thing was.
They had 6 fourth round picks.
I mean,
and it's ridiculous with the Ravens because it's every single year. You leave the draft and say, "Yeah, the Ravens killed it."
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a team that lucked out with taking Kyle Hamilton at 14, and maybe even a pick that's not even going to be talked about enough, and then taking Isaiah Likely when they did as the best player available, in the mid rounds, to go along with their other picks, so
David Sabo waiting,
Travis Jones, Daniel Fatlele, Jalen Armour Davis, Charlie Kolar. It's just like fine. Whatever, man.
Ravens had the best draft in the NFL. You think?
I think so.
Overall, I think so.
I still think
Seahawks did good too. Seahawks did really good.
I will say though, for consideration's sake, I really, really liked what the Jets did. with their ability to. I know that they went and got Breece Hall in the second round, but I mean, like, you went out and you got your wide receiver Garrett Wilson, you got your
Sauce Gardner,
the Sauce Gardner, and then the
Jermaine Johnson.
Yeah, Jermaine Johnson. I mean, like the picks are just escaping me right now. But I mean, like, no, they killed the draft, and with everything that they did from day 1 to day 2, they literally were able to give Zach Wilson its tackle, and then they were able to give Zach Wilson its maybe wide receiver 1 down the line, and Garrett Wilson. Yeah. I mean, it's. And then running back to complement Michael Carter, they did really, really well. And even the other team down in New York did quite well. I mean, you don't have 2 top 10 picks, and then miss on them often, I should say. But it's just like for them to get Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau is, it's really hard to not congratulate the New York teams on their draft.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've watched a lot of drafts, and there were a lot of trades in this one.
Oh man,
the two Browns, the Marquise and AJ, that was nuts.
Yeah, I think people really need to appreciate the offseason we just had. Like that's not gonna happen again. it's absolutely crazy in every phase.
Yeah, it was absolutely ridiculous. And man, if I could trade Hollywood Brown and a little more for Kyle Hamilton, I'd probably do it.
Yeah.
So which Brown got the better of that trade, Marquise or AJ? Of the trades, like, did Marquise end up in a better spot, or did AJ end up in a better spot?
I think Marquise ended up in a better spot, but I now it's iffy because of DeAndre.
It's just like it just depends, because it's like, you're talking about it like from the standpoint of like, it's for the Philadelphia Eagles consideration, it's all about Jalen Hurts, right? And so like if Jalen Hurts takes that leap, in this next year, then AJ Brown's going to just completely go off. And then now you're talking about, him and Devontae Smith, and then even, Tennessee basically replacing him with, Joey's favorite wide receiver this entire class, Treylon Burks, him going to Tennessee, so I mean, I don't know.
Well, it was awesome that their comparison for him was AJ Brown.
That's all I was thinking when they made that pick. I was like, so did they just trade AJ Brown for what they think is going to be AJ Brown?
Mm-hmm. I liked it because then you saw
$9 million less a year or something like that.
$9
significantly cheaper.
That deal was ridiculous. I mean, you saw why. It was like. It was funny because you totally saw it coming, though. You saw it coming. You're just like, watch with Trey Lambert. I wonder if that deal was like
on the table.
They knew that he would be there, like when it was getting closer, and they're like, all right, yeah, let's pull the trigger, trade him, Treylon for. Gosh, I keep doing that for so much cheaper.
Dolchich is still getting me, so it's fine.
So much cheaper. So
hooked on phonics.
Yeah.
So if the Ravens had the best, who had the worst? Raiders.
Who had the worst? I haven't even gone through this.
I keep hearing the Cowboys, but I haven't really looked at.
Yeah, the Cowboys' first 2 picks are a little questionable for sure. I was in Vegas when they made their Sam Williams pick, and the guy next to me laughed.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't very happy about that. The Sam Williams one is a little questionable just because he has substantial off the field issues. That to draft him that high, I would definitely need clear answers on that whole situation. But that's the Cowboys. Honestly, it's a Cowboys type of pick.
I tweeted that immediately. I was like, of course the Cowboys pick Sam Williams.
Yeah, exactly.
If anybody knows about Sam Williams' character concerns, Google it.
Yeah.
It just makes sense.
So Joey, the Broncos drafted 2 sets of teammates, which I can't remember the last time that happened. What's your thought on that, and how does that help the team in your opinion?
I think the big D tackle there is he's interesting just because, hey, if I'm drafting guys late in the 7th, I might as well just take home run flyers, right? Like, it's so rare that these guys make rosters anyway or turn out to be productive NFL players that This is a guy that's a great athlete on the interior defensive line. It's a position you really never have enough of. We were talking earlier about how you could always have a rotation. You want to get to the quarterback with 4, and that's how you do it. Just take a home run swing on a really, really athletic defensive tackle. So I was pretty happy with that pick for sure.
And his Champ Bailey jersey picture didn't hurt either.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the one thing that we haven't talked about, which I believe led to us not selecting any running backs in the draft, is that Melvin Gordon is back with the Broncos, which is, I think, is fantastic. Now, I know it was 1 year, possibly 5, but
possibly
2.5.
It's 2.5 with the potential to reach 5, right?
Exactly.
It's crazy. It's almost like someone at one point said like 4.5 for a year or something. That's crazy. Who would have ever thought that?
But it's a move that it reunites Gordon with Russell Wilson. It's the first time that they've been reunited since Gordon was a freshman in college with Wisconsin, and I believe Wilson was a junior, senior at that point. But
Big Ten domination in that place, man.
I mean, speaking from a Husker fan perspective, yes. And everything that they've been able to accomplish against Nebraska, yes. But the biggest question from the Broncos perspective, or even with Gordon's fit, and Joey can elaborate on it, but I mean, it's just like his fit, right? And so it's one of those cases where you're just he was such a seamless fit for the the inside zone system, and so now they're going into like an outside zone system. And so it's one of those cases where, okay, what are we talking about the overall fit here? Because it's, you're talking about a guy who, truly was productive. And so on the surface, signing him to that 1 year, $2.5 million up to $5 million deal is a significant steal for the type of production that he was able to put forth, over his career.
Yeah, it's hard to be mad at $2.5 million, honestly. And I'm not re-sign old running back guy at all. Like, if you follow me on Twitter, that's not my brand at all. But it's such a low contract that if you can go get proven running back 2 and you're willing to give Javonte Williams more of a snap count there, because I think he deserves it, and I think Broncos country wants to see it. Right, he's that talented. And you drafted him and traded up early into the second round for him for a reason, just go ahead and do it, right? Mike Boone, we're not exactly sure about. I still wonder if he gets any snaps, because if the Broncos are running that outside zone scheme, Mike Boone is a guy that it feels like he would be perfect for that scheme. One cut, go back, brings that speed you're looking for on the edge in that outside zone. But yeah, I don't mind the Melvin Gordon re-signing.
Or Philip Lindsay coming back, right?
Yeah, no, Philip.
Are you surprised the Broncos didn't draft a running back?
Am I shocked? No, because you have all 3 of these guys locked up. And Mike Boone, it's hard to say, just get rid of Mike Boone because of how much of a contributor he is on special teams. You can't just go and sign another running back and hope he's going to be that type of impact. If you can get any impact, I kind of said this earlier, but out of a late round guy, which is where I would assume the Broncos would be taking a running back,
right?
You take that. So the Broncos have their special teams guy in place, and I wouldn't get rid of him.
Yeah. Well, Joey, we definitely want to thank you for joining us again. It's always fun when you're on the show. Where do you want people to follow you and find you at?
Yeah, for sure, guys. At first, I just want to say thanks for having me on. You guys are a blast. I love the show. I tune in as much as I can. I'll say it again: the best intro video ever. I love it. But yeah, you can find all my writing at Mile High Sports. I'm currently writing like a film review on Greg Dulcich, the tight end. So keep an eye out for that coming soon. And yeah, pretty much the Let's Talk Broncos podcast. You listen to Zach, Bree, and I talk about the Broncos, and then just give me a follow at JR Drafts.
Nice.
All right. Nice. Well, again, we thank you for joining us. And make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on notifications so you can catch all of our content when it's posted. Make sure you tune into our other podcast, the Wild Wild West podcast, the AFC West Fan Show, which has been incredible. I love it. That comes on tomorrow at 7:30, 6:30, 5:30, 4:30. The Nothing Rhymes podcast on Thursday at 7654. And Broncos Breakdown, hosted by Bronco Bill, is going to be moved. It's still on Friday, but we're going to be posting it at 2, 1, 12 or 11, depending on where you are, just to kind of give us a little bit more leeway on that show. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to go ahead and head out. Joey, again, thank you so much. Go Broncos. Let's ride.